Welcome to the Inwards and Upwards Show, another show. We've got a wonderful guest today with Dr. José van der Akker, all the way from down under. If you're living in England, it's not down under if you're living down. So, what we're going to be looking at today is the entanglement of the mind, how we get trapped in this material world, and how we come from the heart, and how to learn to come from the heart, which I think is a really, really important part of today's living because we are being shut down. Our hearts are being shut down. Our minds are being conditioned. We've been living through this conditioning for many, many years now. And we're going to go a little bit deeper into that and see what José does to help people come out of this conditioning of the heart. So welcome, José. Good to see you.
Thank you, Peter.
How are you
Thank you.
today? Or this evening, I should say.
Yeah, this evening. Yeah, I'm very good. Thank you. And you?
Yeah, very good, very good. Yes, yes. We've got spring coming in at last. So the beautiful sun is starting to dawn us. I've got a little bit of color on my face, which I always prefer. Get that vitamin D inside of you. So,
Yeah.
first question really got to ask you is how did you get into what you do today? What was your story?
Gosh, heaps of things. But to cut it short, see if I can do that. How I got into this. I've always, ever since I grew up, I wondered what communication actually was.
Yes.
And yeah, so I saw like adults interacting with one another, and I thought, I don't know, I don't want to be that way. Or
Yes.
I couldn't figure it, I couldn't work out what was happening. And yeah, and there was a lot of, like, my family was very busy and everything, and I couldn't handle all that. I was way too sensitive, I realize now.
Yeah.
But so I couldn't handle all that crowd, that crowdiness. So and that noise. And so I became I did teacher training to become primary teacher, school teacher, and then I realized that wasn't for me. And then I did some social work training and realized that that wasn't for me. Then I did like 4.5 years of expression and communication. That is at the Academy for Expression and Communication in the north of the Netherlands, and which is where I'm from. And so that was a unique school, and a lot of the work that we did, all of the work that we did was experiential and philosophical, but the philosophy was totally driven by experience. And so we went through a learning process, both the teachers who also came in with a particular profession and the students who came there to become a teacher in expression and communication. And we guided one another's learning processes, both individually and collectively. So also we were responsible for, that's what we had, 6 criteria, like self-awareness and being aware of self and environment, and well, 4 more. But so we were responsible for the learning of the whole collective as a group. We were with the 220 people of us, and how we were moving forward as an organization, where everyone had one vote and every decision was voted on by everyone. And if one person would disagree, the whole thing would fall apart, and we'd talk through whatever the issues were. So it was a huge personal development thing to learn to guide other people in such processes, personal development processes. But along the way, what I noticed is, like, there was, for example, we had an astrology weekend, and we were, well, I was attuning. I don't know if all the other people were attuning to the space around us. And so I was aware again, like, we can shut down our awareness of the sensations that are around us, or we open ourselves up, like what you do in Qigong, or like when you do standing meditation, we become more aware of all that, or we just engage in stillness and we become aware of the sensations and not the sounds and the smells and all that sort of stuff. So anyway, because I'm naturally sensory, like my touch is my biggest thing. I just sense space things in my environment. I remember that at one point I was sitting next to this woman who had a really strong energy field and felt like not very comfortable, you know. And so I just started to talk about, we were talking about whatever it was, but I was saying, checking in with her, like, hey, do you feel that energy? And she looked at me and as if to say, like, what are you talking about? And I thought, oh, okay, okay, right.
I got one of them
And
next to me. Oh my goodness.
it started then to dawn on me that not everyone felt what I felt,
Yes. Yes.
that some people just don't feel or are so much in their head, or I don't know how it works. But no, you know, like
Mm.
us, well, that's put clump us all together, but us sensitive.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it's important.
Yeah,
Too much energy in the head would really takes you away from your sensitivity. Also, communication is
yeah.
really important. I remember seeing a film and a play. I was so taken by it called Children of a Lesser God about a deaf girl who just couldn't purvey her communication, what she wanted to say. And that's where I felt I've got so much empathy with what you're saying, because I was trying to explain this is what I feel, but they're going, you're what are you thinking too much? You're too sensitive. You're this, you're that, and it's like, no, this is how I feel. This is me, and I had major problems with that. But I loved what you're doing with the group, because that's like the Gnostics. You're looking for your experience to lead you. So it's your spiritual experience, your sensory experience that guides you and leads you. And that
Yeah.
is, we're losing that. We're losing our abilities. Like someone said in my Qigong class the other day, says, well, we don't know what we're capable of, do we? We've lost that completely as a species. I said, yes, yes. Now you're getting into your practice. You're getting deeper into your practice. I think what you've done there, it sounds wonderful. Also, it sounds democratic, truly democratic, where you're actually considering everybody's needs, because we're going to get into this. When you come into the heart, get out of the unraveling of the mind and come into the heart, actually there's mutual agreement with I would say everything, because it comes from a place of love rather than fear. Or if you want to look at it from Dr. Bruce Lipton's point of view, it's more collaboration than competition, because we're living in a competitive world at the moment rather than collaborating. So what you were really talking about so beautifully was about collaboration. So let's get into why that the mind and the heart are not collaborating. I mean, I can talk for hours and hours about this, but what's your take on why the brain or the mind has been sort of taken away from the heart? What do you think has happened here?
Because as a human species and as individuals, we haven't been educated on how the game actually works. That is the game that's being played out in the world, and that makes us believe that we are these bodies, that these identities that we claim every day and every minute of the day, that's us. And obviously it's us, but it's not our core. And so like some key elements that I'm keep on talking about are the core and the field. The field is the quantum field. The core is, like, you could call it a heart, or like that's why I have my logo. That's the core, the heart, and just basically who we are. But it's not just the heart, it's the whole of our being, which is when we unravel the mind, as you were saying, like, and we can unravel the mind, but we need to have the data to understand what the mind actually is, and then we can unravel it. So we need, humanity hasn't been given the data to understand what the mind actually is and how it's different to spirit. And a lot of people nowadays talk spiritual, doing spiritual work, but there's a huge spiritual bypass at the same time by not acknowledging how we are actually engrossed in the physical and the mental universe. Like so how that came to be is just because we've been buying into this game over lifetimes, like way down the time track. We've been buying into these games that people in power and entities in power, or whatever you might want to consider. I don't know. It doesn't matter really. It's
Mm.
just the fact that we've given away our authority, our who we are, and not understood like how we did it. And so my work is all about understanding how we came to this place, how we came to so divided and stuck in our minds. Like, for example, like when I did my PhD, I talked about I explored cross-cultural education and the differences and how communication gets distorted, particularly when people from different cultures communicate with one another. And so I argued, like when we go into the sensing space, you could call that a heart. When we go into the sensing space, we can communicate at that level, and then we can see way beyond the skin and the language and whatever. You just feel in the other person's soul being, like who's embedded, who's in that body that we engage with. And then we communicate at that level. So it's like you could call it compassion, you could call it understanding, you could call it whatever it is, but it's like a matter of being willing and to a degree willing to move into the other person, and yeah, feel
I
what's
get,
going on for the
yeah,
person, resonate
yeah,
with the person.
totally. I get what you're saying because I remember when I was in Australia as a 6-year-old boy, I remember it being on a bridge for some reason, and we met. There were two Aborigines selling boomerangs and other art where they'd done their engravings, and I remember standing next to them and going, "There's a man in a grass skirt, but his energy is phenomenal." And I like it. But why do I like this man? Because he looks really strange to me and it's like nothing I've ever seen before. I sensed that energy in him, that there was no malice, there was no turmoil, none of this stuff that, like you were saying about seeing your family, is like, whoa, what's all this messy communication going on? I saw that, and I thought, wow. And that made me, because we were lucky enough to go around the world on a boat when I was 6, and we went to Fiji and we met all these indigenous tribes in Fiji and other islands around South Africa as well. I think we met some tribes there, and it was just mind blowing. All these people didn't have all this preconception layered onto them, and it is that layering of the mind. And going on to past lives, I feel that I did have a past life memory that I've got really instilled in me, which gave me a problem with money earlier on in my life, because I remember walking out into my palace front, sort of like the living space of my palace, with an infinity pool going down a couple of times into like a courtyard with a balustrade around it, and all the mountains coming down into the sea and this beautiful blue sky, and everything was ornate and plush, and you couldn't want for anything more materialistic. And I would just remember flicking my hands through the water, throwing the water up, then watching it come down into the swimming pool and go, was that all worth it? And even now it gives me goosebumps thinking, was that all worth it? No, it wasn't. It was a massive lesson that I've actually used, a way of manipulating people to make them think I had power over them, obviously to give me that material wealth, which is what's happened to us. We've given our power away. It's money doesn't actually exist, and we've got so hung up about money. Where is money? You can have a token of a note of it, or you can have digits on a screen, a bit of paper, or some coins, or a bar of gold. You say, well, that's worth that much money, but it's not there. There's not, you can't actually, you can't grab it. So it's a token of energy exchange, and we've given away our energy exchange power by using money. Money could be used in a more positive way. In fact, when we do start to come out of the heart, which we were talking about, that collaboration earlier, money will go, which is Ubuntu, South African Ubuntu, which is Michael Tellinger's big thing. And that seems to be working. So it's about the spirit of collaboration and breaking from the mind. But the Vedas, they talk about the mind being the reins of a horse on a chariot. So you got a charioteer with 5 horses of the 5 senses. So a lot of people say the five senses have bolted now in today's world. Everybody's running after the five sense sort of stimulation because they're looking for something more and more and more and more, which will never be satisfied. It's like having a diet that you never feel satiated. You just keep eating and eating. It's the same thing now. Dopamine hits on the phone and all this kind of stuff. So all the five senses are bolted, but the mind actually is supposed to be controlling the reins of those five horses when it goes to your charioteer, which is actually your intellect, your not your intelligence, your intellect, which works with your chariot, which is your ego, which is how you come into the world, i.e., I can be beautifully presented or I can look really shabby. That's okay. And then you've got the energy ball sitting at the back of it, observing everything, which is actually you, which is where you come from. And you're observing this. And the more you can get your intellect, which I call it's your intelligence, really, your innate, heartfelt intelligence, the more you can get your intellect connecting with your intelligence, and then your mind connecting with your intelligence, and then the five horses connecting with your intelligence, and your ego and connecting with your intelligence. All of this makes sense because it's a big, complicated makeup. And even that, the Vedas, the Indian scripts have simplified it compared to what it is, because this is so complex, but there is a reason for us to be on this planet. And there is a reason for us to connect with the body, because in each cell of our body, each atom, even each cell in our body has got the same workings as a huge battleship. It's got that many things happening at the same time in that one cell as a huge battleship just going into battle. So you think about, you've got 500 trillion of those cells in your body or something like that, all working, collaborating together. And that's when the disease comes in, is when the collaboration stops. So it's the collaboration, I agree with you, with the mind and the heart that has stopped us from giving us that connection. So what's your book all about? What do you go into in your book? What do you go into in your book?
So my book is, I run programs that are based on this book, and I run some other courses that dove deeply into the work of Dave, who was my Maori teacher, a man of higher degree. So I incorporate this book. In this book, I incorporate his work, the teachings what I learned from him over a period of 14 years. And the stuff that I came to understand when I lived in Aboriginal community in the Tanami Desert in Australia, and where I learned about paradigms, and like you're talking, the paradigm, like I noticed how I thought and looked at the world totally differently to them. And you can relate to that through your exchanges with indigenous people. But I felt totally, that's when I understood the energy of a paradigm and how powerful a paradigm actually is. Like you have the punishment paradigm that's raining us, like, oh yeah, you have to do right, you have to do wrong. No, sorry. If you don't do right, what society says is right, then you're going to be punished. You're going to be excommunicated. You're going to be fired. You're going to be, yeah, the head chopped off in the old days. So that's still raining. Anyway, I talk about that in this book, and how paradigms control us, how implants, for example, control us. Like, you have, and like the indigenous people used to put implants in the landscape so that people, for example, they put a tapu there in the Maori tradition. They
So
put
what's
a
a tapu? Tapu.
tapu is like a curse.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, on a space. And I'm sure that in the West we used to do that as well. We
Our
used to put
words.
it
Oh, English is
to,
all spelling. So it's all casting spells. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, to protect the space from people entering, and so hence as a result, people get injured when they enter that space, so they'll avoid it and that sort of stuff. Implants are also, obviously the physical implants that we get nowadays, like cochlear implants, or like now do you want to chip people, the implants.
Oh
But
goodness. Yeah.
implants and so they're thought like the way they want to go now with AI is like they, you know, that they want to control our mind by implants, right? Implanting thoughts into our minds. And implants are also just things of people constantly saying, like, you are this, and then you start to believe that, like, unconsciously you take on board that particular whatever person tells you about you, and you take it on board, and now you live with it and you think that that's you. That's also an implant. So I
Yeah.
talk about it in my book. I talk about things like oh gosh.
But implants or yeah,
Right.
curses are big on us. When you look at 9/11, for instance, everywhere across the whole world, terror, 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 attack, 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 terror, 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 9/11, 9/11, attack, attack. It was,
It's
and
purely
the,
implanting.
yeah, and the field in the human, when they realized that they were measuring the field with satellites, that frequency, the fear frequency, boom, went off the spectrum. It's just after that. I could get into 9/11, talk about that for years because it's, but just
Yeah.
to say the one thing that never ever has made sense to me, unless you look at Dr. Judy Woods's research, is why the towers, the twin towers, just turned into dust, dropping at gravity speed, just dropping at that speed. Impossible. Never seen before. Hopefully never seen again. But that was so devastating. And all her book says is, where did the towers go? She's just asking that. She's not having a theory about how it happened. She's conjecturing on things that could have happened, and trying to work out a physical way of how this actually happened. But that was an enormous, enormous implant on all of us. And then
Yes.
you just had the lockdown that's just happened, and that's been another enormous imprint on all of us. And I
Implants.
still haven't felt human beings have recovered from that. I'm still going out, and it's been, what has it been, a year, maybe 2 years now since it stopped. I'm still feeling that fear in people, especially when they come into my Qigong classes and you want to break the fear down, you want to get them to trust you. And I'm finding it harder now. But what I am finding, which is, I think, a real positive out of this, is when they do trust you, that trust is really deep now. When they turn now, it's really deep. Whereas before lockdowns, it was yeah, Peter, yeah. But now I'm finding more loyalty amongst people. When they do connect with you, they want to stay connected with you, which I think is a better thing in some respects. So these things are always there for a reason, I feel. And these they call it the Kali Yuga in the Vedic scripts. I'm not sure if I'd be interested to know if the Aborigines or the Maoris have anything about the cycles of time that we live in. But in the Vedas, they call it the Kali Yuga, where this is the illusory world. The mind is showing you the illusory world, where you're looking at it and you go, this isn't right. It's like the latest statistics, I think, on terror attacks across the world, 50% of them are actually created by the CIA. That's come out as an official story. And you're going, what? And still people are going, yeah, it sounds like a conspiracy theory to me, and all this kind of business. And I'm thinking, you got to believe what you believe, and you got to see what you see. But what you experience in here is more important than what you perceive coming at you out here. I think that's the point of your book, your work. My work is to get people to untangle themselves from this whole
So,
mess.
so what I do in my work too, in addition to giving people an experiential exercise, so for example, I'll ask them to find an object in nature that represents an implant, just so after they've read about it and we've talked about it, that they find something. So this is my work as an art therapist coming in, because I'm an art therapist as well. So I integrate art therapy with what I've learned from Dave. And so that's what I'm doing in my program. So, but in the book, I purely talk about like the theory, like so willingness is another one, viewpoints, and in point one that you would be familiar with, like a viewpoint, we can expand our viewpoint and we can narrow down our viewpoint. But the viewpoint is also, it's like you know, you imagine yourself standing on a rock and you have a view on the world. That's also a viewpoint. Like when you stand on rock, you have a different viewpoint than when you stand on just flat somewhere and with houses all around you, have a different viewpoint. So it depends obviously on your location and becoming aware of where you are located, that impacts on your viewpoint and becoming aware of that. But more importantly, is like what this, just a short discussion that we just had on implants, for example. What I do like to do in the groups that I run is, so say I've talked a little bit about the implants like I just did, and you responded and you gave your angle on it, and then someone else would give their angle on it, and then someone else would give their perspective on implants, and someone else their perspective. And so as such, like Dave, my teacher, always used to say, nobody has 360-degree vision. So, and that's where collaboration comes in again, by sharing our viewpoints, or like David Bohm, the scientist, the quantum scientist, he was big on that too. Beautiful book he wrote, Dialogue, it's called. And it's also about like just sharing viewpoint again. And so because like our viewpoint is so fixed, and again, it's learned through education and everything, like, oh, you have to take on board whatever we say, and otherwise you get punished, the punishment paradigm. And so if you don't, and yeah, so we've unlearned to self-inspect and to look, to reflect on what's actually going on, which is why people's awareness has shut down. Because we've been told time and again, like, oh, you have to look this way, and if you don't look that way, you're out.
Yes.
And so now my work is all about people to sort of taking a blindfold off, like, okay, how have you been conditioned, and what can we learn from one another by sharing our viewpoints on these items that are so important to discuss, that relate to the human condition, explain what the human condition actually is and how we've been conditioned, like through implants, like through paradigms, like through just even things like well, significance and there's so many things I can talk to you about, but it's about discussing those different aspects of how we've been implanted.
Yeah. I've always said that myself from a very young age. So we're all looking at the same picture from different angles. So we need to explain what angle we're seeing it from, but we also need to listen and hear the angles that other people are seeing it from, to see whether it needs healing, and not to judge whether it needs healing, but to see if you can offer healing, because it's that judgment of thinking, well, no, I'm right, this is wrong. And I remember I used to feel that, because I'm thinking, well, no one's seeing this, so this has got to be right. Because it was, but I was seeing it from just a different angle, and there's no really right or wrong in that situation. It was just, I should have been observing it. But that's what we were taught in the Tao philosophy, when I think it's also a Vedic story as well, because it all comes from much the same place, of when you got 5 or 6 blindfold people feeling an elephant. And one of them would say, well, an elephant is a long trunk type thing with like nostrils at the end. No, it's a little skinny tail. No, it's big fat legs. Oh, no, it's big ears. And when we all sit and talk with each other and describe the elephant, we'll get an idea of what the elephant is, rather than having our preconceptions about the elephant and how we see the elephant is, rather than how we individually, I should say, rather than we, the collective, see it. And I think it's that collective consciousness, without going into like the hive mind or the Borg, which is where they're taking us. Like everybody thinks the same, everybody feels the same, everybody is the same, it's homogenous and lifeless as far as I'm concerned. There's no spark of creativity there. That's what they call the collective mind. Our collective mind is our collective consciousness, which is what I alluded to earlier. So when we tap into it, it's love. It's love. It's the heart. So it's unraveling the complications of the mind, coming down into the heart and starting to trust that. And it's not about being open-minded so your brains are falling out all over the place. It's not about opening up the heart so that you accept everything, because you don't. It's not about allowing people to come in and take, because you shouldn't. You should be a sovereign being in your own right. And that's what has happened to all of us. Our sovereignty seems to have dropped. And a very interesting thing which sprang to mind when you're talking about your going in with your 240 people, I think it was, in your training. In the City of London, where they say democracy started, they didn't want to join the other boroughs of London, like Southwark or where was it, Westminster. They wanted to keep it as the City of London because they realised that they would lose their democracy for their local community. And still today, the City of London is its own independent state. It's not part of the UK. And many people don't realise that. My wife did, because she used to work up there. Say, yeah, we all know the City of London is not part of the UK or England. But this is where our ancestors knew they weren't giving their things away on the material world. And you shouldn't be giving it away spiritually either, I don't think. But you should be sharing. You should be your own sovereign being, sharing your space with other people and collaborating. And creative, what I would say, the right brain. Because the left brain is very powerful, but the right brain really is, to me, where I've always sat most of my life, is I could look at this and go, well, I could learn that, but what's the point in me learning pages and pages of stuff that I'm never going to use? Whereas when I get into like fractal geometry and sacred geometry, and then that beautiful maths that create everything, the fractal geometry that creates everything from the tiny micro to the macro, that is fascinating to me. Whereas doing all these little crazy equations that kind of explain the motion in the material world, I don't know, I just find that a little bit bogged down and tedious. So it is about coming from the heart and the right brain as far as I'm concerned, but it's about bringing down that higher energy. We call it the upper danjon, our spiritual connection, which is the pineal gland, the pituitary gland, that whole area with the hypothalamus. There's a little sac in there that's when we get the spinal cord fluid moving up properly into that sac, then you get that piezoelectric activities happening in your pineal gland, and you get this spiritual download, which I know you've had. It all looks different. So when was the first time you feel that you actually broke through the mind, broke through the trappings of the mind? Was there a particular moment, or have you had a particular, aha, I've done it? But you never do it, do you? But is that a big breakthrough for you? When was a big breakthrough for you?
After a couple of times, like Dave, my teacher, he also designed session sheets. And so he encouraged people to do self-sessioning. Like sometimes when you really, some stuff is we are so caught up in stuff that we need someone to help us. But he always said like self-sessioning is preferred because you need to discipline yourself. So to go, like he had a sheet of items, like for example, judgments, like, and then first of all, what do you want to clear? So, well, I want to clear whatever it is. I can't see, I don't know, whatever it is that you want to clear, something that's bugging you. And then go through a process of, well, are there any judgments? Are there any blames? Are there any expectations, any significances, any beliefs? Any attachments, any and so on, a whole list of things. And so by going through them, we in a self session or in sessioning someone else, when I session someone else, it's like just ticking like, yep, got a judgment on, yep, that judgment on it, that judgment, yes, I'm blaming, self-blame, other blame, yeah, all that, blame God, blame everyone, okay. And then when there's a recognition, it's like recognition, like, the light comes on, okay, got it, okay. And then next item, got it. And then the picture starts to expand and our self comes out, because we've made decisions way down the time track, and we still make decisions every day at the spiritual mental level, like, I won't engage in this, for example, or in a minute I'm gonna fall, like, that's a decision, like, Oh, really? Why would I fall? Like, but it's like catching on to those decisions, like, oh, that's actually a decision. Right. And then change. So that for one is invaluable because now how we got caught up in the system, that one decision, by recognizing it, we unhook ourselves from that game, so to speak, from that energy
Mm,
field. And so by going through a list of these items, we recognize the different decisions that we've made in the present, which is obviously that relates to the past, because the past doesn't really exist. It's all, we embody it all here in the here and now. It's just we think that we're separate from the past and that there's a future and a past, but and all that's made up as well. But anyway, and then I had a couple of, there's another session, like a protest rundown, he calls it, and so it's like when like many of us are, like, I'm sure that you protest quite a bit. Like, something is happening, you feel this protest, like, oh shit, I don't like this, or just like, no, I'm just bugger, I'll protest this.
I'm
And
getting it at the moment. Yeah, with a few.
And so by doing a protest rundown, it's like going around, like, okay, the whole area of protest sort of just unravels. And then it's like, right, now I get it. And then now I understand the significance of doing all that. I understand the game better. And then,
Mm,
whoa, okay, right, now I know why I was doing all that. And then all the pieces start to fall into place.
mm,
And that feels really enlightening. It's like, wow, okay. And like that's when in these moments, I felt my spirit come right out and expand out because that stuff had just dropped away.
mm. That's a beautiful thing when it does drop away. I remember my first out of body experience. I've only had two, and it was playing a gig actually. Some people call it something different than out of body experience. The International Academy of Consciousness called it something different, but I was definitely out of my body, and I was definitely looking down at my body, and I was definitely more aware of everything. But when I came back, and then I went back to visit, I was doing like a session gig with Thin Lizzy, and then when I came back to London, and I was in the band that I was in, they were saying you're too different now. You've changed, because it was literally shedding all of that material stuff off and going into, there's something a bit deeper than all of this. And they go, well, what are you talking about? We just want girls and the drugs and the drink and blah, blah, blah. Go, no. There's something a lot more deeper and more profound for us to be looking for. And then they said, oh, you just, you're too much for us now, Peter. We have to ask you to leave the band, even though it was only a three-piece. And it was weird being, I'm used to being rejected out of my academic school, even though I tried really hard towards the exam time just to please my father, because he was upset because I was always getting into trouble, and people, because I was always questioning teachers, like questioning the physics teacher, or questioning not so much the chemistry teacher, because I think that was fairly black and white, but the physics teacher in particular, I was always questioning, going, excuse me, that doesn't sound right to me. Is that a theory or is that a fact? He goes, Parker, it's a theory. Get out. And then he didn't like the other students realizing that it was a theory, because they were trying to put in this paradigm of, this is material world, this is how it is, this is blah, blah, blah. And I was thinking, no, it's not, even back then. But when I had the out of body experience, that all came clear to me, that what I was feeling as a young man or young boy in school suddenly came to light. And you go, oh my goodness me, now I understand why I was questioning him, why I was really breaking his backside off every time he spoke. And he's going, why are you so difficult? And same with my brother John used to say that about me. Why are you so difficult? I said, because I'm questioning what you're talking about, because I don't actually feel that it's true. And there's nothing wrong with that questioning. But as I said, sometimes I have the humility now, whereas before I didn't, say, well, yeah, okay, I didn't quite get the whole picture of that, but that's part of my learning process, not yours. Not for you to squash me and that question, that beautiful inquisitive mind that's trying to find answers for you to actually get yourself into a deeper place into this material existence. It's how we get squashed is incredible. So being highly sensitive, when did you realize that you were being squashed? How you thought, how you felt?
Always.
Always,
How
always.
always is the time frame and how I felt it. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
It just how I can only describe how it felt.
Go on. Yeah, go on. Yeah, yeah.
It felt like a big, just like a big cloth being thrown over me. Like
Like a
Dave would
weight.
call it
Yeah.
cloaking, being cloaked. Like, and so my light was just it couldn't exist or something. It's sort of that ugly. We would call it dark side. It's sort of like the dark side of the human condition that, like people don't know that they're doing it, that
Yes.
they're squashing us. Because it's for them, it's automatic and they themselves have probably been squashed and they don't know what it feels like or looks like to be ourselves. And
Mm,
so, and they don't understand the human, well, who we are as different to the human conditioned being. And
mm.
so they just dump. And I mean, we do dump it. Like, I mean, the more conscious, but it's like a learning process, like you said, like
Yeah.
so we get squashed and then we fight back and we protest. And then and yeah, and then it's like that's a learning process. And then slowly we, like you had that experience that you had and it all fell away, and then it's again a process of finding out, okay, how am I with this new discovery that I've made, or rediscovery is what I would call it, rediscovery of who you really are, which you knew all along, but now it was there in clear daylight, but so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so then it's like, okay, how am I going to cope with the physical world now with this new awareness? Like
Mm,
people just don't understand, and then it's like finding a new language to navigate that world that we've
mm.
always were part of, but now it's um, yeah. And so my work is by about giving people that language by understanding how the human condition works, and so then we can feed that back to other people too, like, oh, do you or not just stay at least being on our own, staying on our own platform by being able to unpick what we hooked in now, how we may get triggered by someone who squashes us again, and then by quickly doing an unravel and unpick of what's squashed, what's the trigger, and how we the fact that we bought into something again and took something on board again, but ever so quickly, we can also just then flick it back
Yes.
to where it belongs. It's not part of us and we don't need to take it on board.
Yeah. I wouldn't even say flick it back, but yeah, I know what you mean because it's like in the Vedic scripts, I love the way they describe it, which is like ignorance, passion, and goodness. These are like the cycles we get in. We start off with ignorance, we maybe get something we're passionate about, then might lead us into goodness, and that goodness even will come back around to ignorance. And you're forever going around these three areas. And when you unravel yourself and you break free from these, you can actually go into a causal type existence, which is more ethereal, more you look at everything and go, and observe it. You don't go, well, you're in the mode of ignorance. Oh my God, I hate you. You don't feel like that. You think, is there any way I can help you with that ignorance, or do I need to walk away now? So you're more observing it from a causal perspective rather than thinking, you ignorant idiot, what's the matter with you? And then trying to explain to them something that you've spent years actually unraveling yourself from. You're not going to do it in 2 minutes. That's why we set up these programs, right? But that's where we need to come to, especially as highly sensitive human beings, because we're like smothered. We've got rocks on us. We're sort of undervalued. And there's nothing wrong with being highly sensitive, because it's not about being over touchy, over sentimental, over emotional, all this kind of stuff. It's a sensory input. It's actually a biological trait that your nervous system is highly tuned to all of this, and you can learn to deal with it and learn to actually use it for the betterment of everybody around you and yourself. So you look after yourself first, which is why I say journey inwards and then succeed outwards. Because you find out what's going on here. This is really complicated, noisy, spinning around and around, having all these discussions in my head that I'm trying to rectify other people's problems when I'm thinking, wow, I should be sorting this out for myself, unraveling from it, and then seeing where I can go from there, which is why I love Qigong, and I love how I found Qigong and how I teach it, because I do a lot of work in the local community, and it's beautiful to see people slowly change over the time when they connect more with themselves. And I had a lady, she was in her 80s. She said, Peter, I've never been able to sit comfortably on my own, quietly, ever in my life. There you go. Now you got it. Now you can sit and you can actually start to be. You're being a human being. And I'm thinking, this is what we need to be doing. We need to be coming into ourselves as beings and seeing what we are, because it's different to what we think we are. We think we're doings marching around. Look at the all the wars across the world. Even back in the Roman times, when they were marching for days, they were so strong. This is why this is where talking about protesting is the environment thing at the moment, which is, I think, what they're proposing as a solution to it is a con. What needs to be happening is it really needs to come soon, because we are messing up this environment, something chronic. But our ancestors, they didn't have that environment, so they were more connected to the earth. So they could march for 4, 5, 6, 7 days and then still fight at the end of that. Still have a massive battle for 3, 4, 5, 6 days, even a week's battle. Like the Romans were doing that. We couldn't probably walk round the corners to get a bottle of water. As human beings, that's how bad this has become, and how disassociated and unattached we are to the earth. Is, to me, wow, is mind-blowing to me. But we're not seeing that yet, because we're still in this mode of, when you see somebody, say, eating, I don't know, an organic salad, or like me, I'm a vegan. I don't touch any animal products anymore. And I try to make sure anything that we eat has got very little processing, if any at all. And people look at you and go, well, that's a bit healthy, isn't it? I mean, where did that attitude come from? Where do you think that conditioning came from? Because that's, to me, it's crazy to think, well, no, it's not. I like the way the Indians, the Asians see it, because they see food as food and the junk as junk. And they say, okay, well, I'm going to have a bit of junk now, but I'm going to have proper food later. We don't think like that in the Western world. We just go for the junk. So how do you think we can unravel ourselves from this mess that we're in, especially with food? Food is very interesting to me. How do you think we could do that? Big question, I know, big question.
Yeah. Because a couple of things, whilst you were talking, a couple of things came up, but I've sort of lost now what came up. But it's like, it's to answer your question, I think it just relates to, it's about people.
Don't worry about answering my
Begin
question.
with me and us. When we engage with other people, it's to, okay, what's actually going on for me in this relationship that I'm having now with this person, and they will catch on, because we're sensory beings. So people catch on where we are in our space, and if we are at home ourselves, like at home, like in, balanced inside our body and aware, then they feel it, and then and then something will dawn. Something dawns, like people get curious, or they might condemn you at first, or us condemn us first. But then by just all, like I call it, being on platform, when we just hold our platform, stand on that space where we stand naturally as ourselves, where we stand strong, not in position, but just as an aware self, then another person will catch on, and the grounding sort of is part of that. It's sort of just like holding a safe space.
Holding the
And when
space, yes, yes,
the space is safe that we
yes.
hold, and people do get grounded because they just, their turbulence in their mind sort of just it can't hold. And so they move into their bodies, and then it's automatically going to the feet, and they actually sit on their bum rather than sort of hover above it, like energetically. Yeah. So I'm pretty, like we have to, when we've become more aware, so to speak, we have to assume that responsibility, and that takes courage to assume that responsibility, and hold that space and hold that responsibility as the task that we have, that we are that we're taking up for, that we've always chosen to have. And so now it's about holding that space and moving forward in every exchange with other people, or dogs or cats or trees or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Just possible, hold that space, which is that hard space that you're talking about. And when there's turbulence, to do an unpick, like what you were saying, like to unpick and find out, like, okay, what happened here? Let's just clean that space out, and so that I'm clear again. And yeah.
I don't think people realize how much this negative energy gets stuck into us. I love the work of Dr. Emoto. I think that's been taken further by another scientist who's working with water and vibration, and some of the things I've seen that they've used with cymatics, especially in water, and how the frequency they're put into water, and just it's mind blowing. So when we realize that, when we even using our mouths, and I still do it, I'm not perfect, I must admit, using our mouths when something bad happened actually to me this morning. I had a beautiful avocado and tomato whole spelt flour, which is like ancient grain bread that we make ourselves, sandwich. I went to pick it up. I had a long sleeve top on at the time with baggy sleeves, got caught under a cooker thing for some reason. Boom! One of the sandwiches straight on the floor. Bad came out. And then I thought, okay, I forgave myself very quickly. Okay, well, that was just a instinctual reaction inside of me. But being highly sensitive, and with all the heavy energy that used to be inside of me, that would have kept me going for like hours, thinking, oh, I'm so cursed. I'm so, why is it always happening? It's going into that victim consciousness. Why is this always happening to me? What's wrong with me? There's something really wrong with me. And it would have gone down into this spiral like that. And I don't think people realize how much of this negative energy gets stuck in the body, which is my point, is water holds memory. And they're starting to realize, I feel, that our subconscious mind, all the conditioning that we've been through, is being held in the water, which goes into the energetic blueprint of the body. And therefore, that's how it gets stuck. So we need to be changing our energy as often as we possibly can, either using the mind or the body, or both, preferably, to try and get rid of this subconscious programming that's inside of us, which becomes instinctual. We think it's us, but it's not. We think, oh, I'm always like that, so I'm always going to be doing that. No, you can do that. You can change. Even my wife's gone, oh my God, you've changed. You've changed. It's like, yes, I'm more open to it. Whereas before, my ego was saying, well, no, I've had spiritual revelations. I've done this, I've done that. And you think, what am I holding on to? What am I holding on to exactly? And we don't realize what we're holding on to. Preconditionings. We're holding on to negative energy in the body. We're supposed to be flowing through this. I love Bruce Lee's training. Flow like water. When the water goes into the cup, become the cup. When it flows out of the cup onto the desk, become the desk. Flow. That's why it's called currency. Why money is called currency. Going back to that point earlier, money is supposed to be currency. We're supposed to flow. It shouldn't be caught up in the banks and the corporations. It shouldn't be caught up. It should be flowing across everything. That's why it was originally created. So we need to learn to flow, but get rid of the the harmful negative energy stuck in our body. It's so important. So once we've done that and we live through the heart, what kind of world do you see us living in?
Yes, a world without attachment, hey?
Yeah. Can you put some words onto that? Can you put some words how human beings could be? I know it's a big question.
Yeah, without attachment.
Yeah.
What is that? Well, it's just limitless, isn't it?
Yeah.
Unlimited, unlimited, just, yeah, well, just presence, unlimited presence. Let's call it that way.
Infinite possibility. Infinite possibility with the people that you meet, the animals that you encounter, where
Mm.
you go with this, how your imagination can blossom, how your right brain can blossom, how your creativity can blossom, how you can feel more love, deeper and more profound without that pain of thinking, well, they're going to hurt me. They're going to hurt me because I got hurt before. I've known a little bald man before. He hurt me. So, Peter, is he going to hurt me as well? So, it's all of that kind of stuff that we have preconceptions that we need to break down and actually come out of this conditioning. This conditioning is causing what people think human nature is. It's all the conditioning. They say, well, you turn on the news and it's all war, death, violence. It's all conditioned. It's all a conditioned human being. When you look at the indigenous tribes, I've heard this about the Aborigines. I hope this is true, but I've heard this about the Aborigines. When they had a dispute over something, they would line up as if they were going to go to war with each other and just stand there with the sticks and just look at each other. And then they'll have altercations. They'll talk about it, and then they'll come to some sort of agreement, and then they'll line back down, go back into their separate places. And you think, okay, well, that's fair enough, because at least they're talking about it and they've accepted the issues. They said, well, we can fight if we want to, but what's the point? Brilliant. Because there's I personally feel there's enough for everybody. There's enough energy for everybody. There's enough food. There's enough shelter. There's enough energy. You could fire up London from the amount of energy just in the air around my fist. There's enough energy on the world. There's enough love. We're just taken away from that by being enclosed in our physical body. So we got a golden age coming up.
How good would it be if we could just, with seeing all of that stuff that you're talking about and how we get caught up in everything, or how humanity got caught up over time, and then coming to that place that we can just see it all, like, and see in the moment, like, right, just catch on to the whole game and see it all, and actually be able to laugh about it, like what we did in the past. Say we've recognized the whole thing, the whole game. It's just we understand it completely, how we got hooked in and everything, and it's always like we're completely free from all of that, and we can just look at it and look at it like, wow, look at that, the amount of learning I did as a result of being hooked in all that stuff. And now I'm free, and I thank you. I thank you for
Yeah,
having taken me
yeah.
through that mess. And I
Gratitude.
can and I can enjoy myself by looking at it, by and seeing it repeated in other people or whatever, in other societies, and yeah, and be kind of amused in a way because recognizing, like, okay, well, what it actually is, that it is just a game that's savvy when we're down there, but when we're up here, it's just a game. And so how good would it be if all of humanity, see, I had a picture at one point, Peter, that really inspired me. I was flying from Europe to Australia, or the other way, I'm not sure. But I was just sitting in my passenger seat, and then I stood up at one point for whatever reason. And I looked at all the people, and it was as if I saw this a being above every being, every person. And I thought, wow, look at that. These people, we are all spiritual beings. We can all hold this plane all together and fly this plane just by our beingness.
Mm.
That's, and that was, yeah, that really, yeah, that
No,
did
it's
something.
wonderful.
Yeah,
We really have got
that's
no
my
idea.
vision of it, really. That's where we can take it
Yeah, we've
to.
got no idea we're at the moment. I think us who are unraveling this are starting to see where we can take this, because we are far more powerful than we can even begin to imagine, I feel, which is part of this whole learning process of going back through your past. Oh, why did I get attached to that? Why did I get angry about that? Why did I lash out at that? Why did I hurt that person? Why did I get violent? Why did I do this? Why did I do that? And go through all of that, because that's coming out of the lower vibrations, the lower waveforms that we're stuck in, into the higher waveforms. And it's like a, it's almost like a, for want of a better word, it's almost like a safety gauge that's stopping you getting into a position, which is where humanity is at the moment, especially with nuclear bombs and things like that. We are 2-year-old children with an adult's toy that could be very destructive. And we've done that. And this is because we haven't done this learning curve of coming through all of that to have the wisdom to actually have what we have at this point in time. And I was listening to a discussion with Bruce Lipton last night, and I thought it was fascinating when he's saying we're at the 6th extinction level now. And we have a choice whether we go with our health and well-being and the spirituality, which the Vedas actually say this as well, that this extinction will not affect you because you're more into your spiritual path, or you choose to go with this material world, which will just take you down, because all the systems, and there's enough facts now going around to say that all the systems are actually starting to fall apart and shake quite violently, which is why you're getting 24/7 bombardment of propaganda coming out of the news. So you have this choice now, right now on this planet. And that's a beautiful thing, because I choose love. I choose, even though all the terrible things I've seen human beings do, I still believe in what we are, which is not this flesh and bones. We are far deeper than this. I still know that we are. And so therefore I would never choose the material world over this. And we have to let this unravel. We can do our bit by reaching out and helping other people, and then talking with each other, having discussions like this, which I hope you've got something from me. I've definitely got something from you, which has been brilliant. So I'm really most grateful for that. But also, I loved what you're saying about being grateful for your experiences, even the bad ones, being grateful, and then thanking everybody for being part of that, for your learning curve. Because when we get through the doors of perception, when we call it death, which is actually not death, you'll see why we've done all of these things. And I think that's so beautiful. Personally, I think it's beautiful, which is why I think this physical existence is pretty awesome, actually, because it's like driving a car. To me, when you first get in a car, it's exciting, and then it gets boring and boring. And I think we're getting to the point where actually this should never get boring, because there's so much work to be done. So we've gone way over time. So never mind. It's been beautiful talking to you. So how do people get hold of you, Jose? How do people get hold of you and your book? How do get hold of your book?
They can go to my website. It's on the back of this book, so I'll show you. Can you see it here?
universalheart.com.au.
That's the one.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's got
Wonderful.
different tabs on it, and people can just go and explore, and even book a discovery session if someone wants to have a chat with me, a free discovery session, just to have a chat about whatever's going on for them, and they might
Wonderful.
want to
Yeah.
do some work with me or not, up to, we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah. Leave it open. But any last thoughts, feelings, suggestions?
Um, Any last thoughts? No, just thank you for hosting this space, of holding this space for people like me to talk and for people to listen, who tune into your podcasts or videos, whatever the format is. And yeah, and I know that things will turn out right, but we just need to stay attuned and stay close to who we really are. Just keep it close to our heart and just close to who we really are, and be willing to be responsible for ourselves, warts and all.
Yes, yes, beautifully said. All right, we're going to call it a day there. So big love to everybody, and I'll give you a virtual hug, Dr. José, for being with us. Till next time.